Members, questions for Chairman Leach. Representative Gonzales.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate the conversations we've had leading up to this bill. And so I just have a few questions for you. Some you may not be able to answer, and so I'll just ask from some of the witnesses.
Sure.
But do you happen to know the current procedure for informed consent for Texans who are seeking gender affirmative care?
For informed consent for Texans who are seeking, what's the language you used? I didn't hear you.
Seeking gender affirming care.
I'm going to defer to one of my experts coming after me who will better be able to speak to that. I assume, just based on my experience with these issues, that the informed consent language is going to be different for a minor as opposed to someone who's the age of majority. I'm not positive about that, but I'm going to defer. Let me defer to the expert witnesses who are coming after me.
Okay.
It's a good question.
Okay, and so in your bill, when it refers to adverse outcomes, can you define what that means, or what you would consider adverse outcome?
So I can tell you that based on my research and my extensive conversations about this issue and about this bill specifically, there is a growing body of evidence, Representative Gonzales, of the short and long-term effects of many of these treatments. We just heard a bill in our committee, in the Judiciary Committee last week. It's another bill, and I know we don't want to get into that, but we heard testimony just last week from some folks who are detransitioning, who had treatments when they were minors specifically, or earlier in their lives, and we heard those anecdotes and those stories about some of the effects that they're experiencing now, not only physical but emotional and chemically in many cases. So I think the evidence is clear. I'm not saying that the vast majority or even a majority of people who have transitioned are experiencing adverse effects, but there is a growing body of evidence that there are a lot of people who are, and you're going to hear some of their personal stories today.
I just know that everybody's body responds differently, right? So like to hormone procedures, for example. And so, so every person's experience is different, right? And we know that, with just any kind of medication, period, right? Let's say, for example, someone starts taking testosterone, treatment, right? And that could result in hair loss, right? Is that, it may not cause that in another person. Is that going to be something that, is that going to be considered adverse? Because the same thing would happen whether you're taking testosterone, whether you're transitioning or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think whether you're talking about any medical treatment, put this issue aside, any medical treatment that any one of us might receive, the way I might react physically or the way I would react might be different than the way Representative Wharton or Chairman Dean might react to a certain treatment. And that's what we're seeing with this type of treatment as well, where the number of detransitioners, people who have had individuals who have received treatment at one point who are now wishing to detransition, that number of people is growing. And many of them, some of whom you're going to hear from today, are left in this position where they received coverage for an original treatment, but now they're wishing to detransition and to get their bodies back in many cases and their well-being back, and they have no coverage for that. And so in a sense, if an insurance company, that's what this bill is all about. It's not prohibiting any type of insurance coverage. It's simply saying, insurance company, look, if you're going to cover this original procedure and there are adverse effects specifically, then you should cover those as well. That's all this bill is intending to do.
Do you know if, so for example, I have a nephew that, he's kind of smaller guy, and, his parents put him on, I guess, testosterone, right? Or just so he can kind of, because he was being picked on, and so if that results in, because it's also used for that as well, right? To kind of, when kids are just smaller, or even just blockers for kids who develop, a little bit quicker. Do you know if that would result in hair loss to him as a result? Would that be covered by their insurance?
I
You don't know?
I don't know the answer to that question. I want to be careful not to, at least in my position here, get into individually specific cases and/or specific insurance carriers and what they may or may not cover. So I'm going to make myself comfortable with simply saying I don't know the answer
No,
to that.
fine.
It's an important question, and I think we're going to hear some expert testimony today that will be able to speak more to those specific questions.
Okay, and just one last question for now. Do you think this will lead to insurance providers, for somebody to have to self-identify, like if, let's say they're enrolling into a new insurance plan, to where now it would, maybe ask a question on whether you're trans or thinking about transitioning? I mean, do you think that it's going to lead to that, somebody having to self-identify?
Well, I think that when someone receives, and this legislature has, I think rightfully so, there might be some disagreement here. This legislature has drawn a line in the sand when it comes to the treatments that are afforded under law in this state to minors. Okay, so let me put minor population aside and speak to the age of majority in Texas. I think that my belief is that when it comes to health insurance, more competition, more choice is better for all of us when it comes to health insurance. When it comes to this specifically, individual insurance companies are going to have to make a decision about whether they want to continue to provide coverage for these type treatments. And those are business decisions for those companies, and this bill does not affect that in any way. No part of this bill says that an insurance company cannot provide coverage for a gender transition treatment or surgery. What it does say is simply that if you do provide that coverage, then you also, under state law, have to provide any adverse effects, coverage for any adverse effects, and for any detransition that person might later want to go through. So that's what this bill does. I just want to be very clear in what it does and what it does not do. So
No,
I'm
and-
not worried about that. But again, those would be decisions that individual insurance companies would have to make.
And again, I mean, in our conversations, I mean, I would never want to deny anybody healthcare coverage, right? And so by no means am I against that. I guess my concern is that somebody would be denied coverage because they're trans, or because an adult who, right, what have you, or that insurance companies are gonna stop offering that coverage moving forward. And so that's just one concern that I have that we've discussed. But thank you.
I understand. Thank you. And I so appreciate our conversations as well, Representative Gonzales, and our friendship, and look forward to hearing more comments from you on this.
Other questions for Chairman Leach?